Hello students, welcome you all to my channel. In the previous video, we have covered the computation of allowances, different types. And in this video, let us move on to the computation of perquisites. Perquisites are any benefits attached to the office or to a position in addition to the salary in the form of kind or service. For example, rent-free accommodation or free gas electricity provided, or maybe discharging the commitment of the employee by the employer, giving movable assets to the employee for his usage, free ship or concessions given, medical facility given, educational facility given, all these could be considered as perquisites. We can broadly classify the perquisites into three categories, that is taxable perquisites in all the cases of employees, perquisites taxable only in the case of specified employees, and the tax-free perquisites. Taxable perquisites in the case of all the types of all the category of employees. One is rent-free accommodation. Suppose the employer provides to the employee a free accommodation. House is given for accommodating. Such is said to be rent-free accommodation. Sometimes a subsidized accommodation is provided to the employee. Such is said to be concessional accommodation. Any obligation of the employee is discharged by employer. Maybe some club membership fee, maybe some renewal fee, that could be considered as perquisites. Then any sum paid directly or indirectly for the benefit of the employees or members of his household, that would be considered as perquisites. Then any securities or asset equity shares issued to the employees without adequate consideration is said to be perquisites. Then contribution to superannuation fund or any type of fund in excess of 1 lakh rupee would be taxable. And finally, value of any fringe benefit given to the employee as perquisites. These are certain perquisites taxable only in the hands of specified employee, that is, a car is given for conveyance. Watchman, gardener, sweeper or security personals given to the employees. Gas, electricity, water, etc. given to the employees. Education facility, etc. provided to the members of the household. Then transport facility given to this category of employees or specified employees. Then what is specified employees? Who is a director? At the same time, he is an employee in the company. He is said to be director employee of the company. Second is any person who is having substantial interest in the business. Substantial interest means nothing but an employee who is having more than 20% of voting right in the company. Then that person is said to be, the person is having substantial interest in the business. In their case, any concession or facility is given, that would be considered as perquisites. Then in any other case, if the employee's salary is more than 50,000 rupees, that employees are said to be specified employees. So in the case of specified employees, any such kind of benefits is given or attached, it will be taxable under the title perquisites. Then finally, there are certain tax-free perquisites, that is, tea, snacks, etc. given to the employee during the working hours will not be taxed. Then residential accommodation given in the work site, if the total built-up area does not exceed 800 square feet, and if it is far from the municipal area where he could not find out an accommodation, then that accommodation provided at the site will be exempted. Then telephone, including mobile phone connection, and the bills paid by the employer will not be considered as perquisites. Then group insurance scheme provided or the premium paid by the employer for a group insurance scheme for all the employees in that organization, then that will not be considered as perquisites. Then scholarship given to the members of his household, then conveyance facility provided, then refresher course provided for the employees by the employer or the expenses met by the employer will not be considered as perquisites. Then tax on perquisites paid by the employers will not be considered as perquisites. Then perquisites given to the government employees who is working abroad will not be considered as perquisites. Then rent-free accommodation and conveyance facilities given to the judges of high courts and as well as Supreme Court will not be considered as perquisites. Then rent-free accommodation provided to the ministers and the leaders of opposition in the parliament will not be considered as perquisites. Laptop, computer, etc. given to the employee or members of household will not be considered as perquisites. Interest-free loan given to the employee if it is not exceeding 20,000 rupees, which will not be considered as perquisites. But if it is more than 20,000 rupees, that interest-free or concession given shall be considered as perquisites. Movable assets given to the employee for his use, if it is after using 10 years of usage by the employer, then that asset will not be considered as perquisites. And periodicals, journals, etc. supplied or bought and given to the employee for his profession will not be considered as perquisites. And there are two more things, that is leave, travel concession and medical treatment, that we will discuss. If the medical treatment that takes place in India or if the medical treatment that takes place outside India. Now first let us see what is the conditions for getting the concession or free for the medical treatment that takes place in India. If the hospital run by the employer, maintained by the employer, provides the medical treatment to the employee or members of his household shall be exempted. Similarly, if the hospital is maintained by the government or the local authority, then it shall be exempted if the treatment expenses met by the employer or reimbursed by the employer, or if that particular hospital is meant for that particular disease, then if the expenses met by the employer or reimbursed by the employer shall be exempted. And for getting that concession, the employee has to submit a certificate stating that this hospital is maintained for giving treatment for such kind of disease, and also all other supporting document related to the treatment. Then only the employee would get this kind of an exemption with respect to the treatment. Then any health insurance premium paid by the employer for the benefit of the employee or his members of household shall be exempted. Similarly, any reimbursement of health insurance premium done by the employer shall be exempted. If a medical treatment done by the employee or members of his household from a private hospital, whether the employer met the bill or reimbursed the bill to the extent of 15,000 rupees shall be exempted up to the year 2018-19 assessment year. After that, it will not be permitted. If the treatment taken from abroad, it is classified into two segments, that is treatment, and the other hand, that is travel and accommodation of the deceased and one attendant. So the treatment expenses shall be exempted based on the prescription or condition by the Reserve Bank of India. So based on the RBI ceiling, the treatment expenses shall be exempted. Say for example, 2,50,000 is the expenses incurred for treatment from abroad, and RBI having that prescription for that particular year is 2 lakh rupees, then that remaining 50,000 has to be added with the salary income. Travel and accommodation for the treatment abroad shall be exempted provided if the gross total income of the employee not exceeding 2 lakh. Otherwise, this travel and accommodation expenses met by the employer or reimbursed by the employer shall be taxable provided if the gross total income is more than 2 lakh rupees. So, with respect to the medical benefits or medical facility provided by the employer to the employee or members of his household or reimbursed by the employer to the employee, then it shall be considered in this pattern, that is treatment in India and treatment outside India. If it is in India, then this condition has to be considered. If it is beyond that, it would be taxable. If it is taken from abroad, then these two conditions has to be considered, that is for treatment RBI conditions or prescription. In the case of the travel and accommodation, that is exempted only to the employees whose gross total income is less than 2 lakh rupee. Hope this is clear.